somewhat orderly. Just be comfortable and be able to participate. Thank you for joining us. Most of you that I see have been here for the past several days, so probably don't need further introduction. Are you okay there? If you're comfortable. Oh, Dao Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Nice to see you. So we have our esteemed guest as His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ji, well known throughout the world from his prolific activities in explaining the Bhagavad Gita to many, many devotees. Prabhuji has been teaching and mentoring devotees throughout the world for, 2.5 decades. Is that about right? Yes. And we were discussing how in the course of 1 year, he goes through 400 cities, speaking about Bhagavad Gita, 4,000 articles on the Bhagavad Gita. He's a member of the GBC Shastric Advisory Committee, which explores the intricacies of Shastra and application. So very learned. Also the editor of Back to Godhead. Have you seen Back to Godhead, Leslie Mataji? So he's every issue that comes out almost always will have a wonderful, insightful article by Prabhuji. So we're exploring a seminar on Sharanagati. Prabhuji will summarize for those of you that weren't here. It's a deep topic about cultivating and developing spiritual emotions that help us on our path to our relationship with Lord and all of creation. So without further ado, let's welcome His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu with a loud Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. We have a wonderful devotee here. Most of you don't probably know her. This is Leslie Mataji and Brian Prabhu. Leslie Mataji is from Salem and Brian is from Northeast Portland, right? And so I just met Leslie Mataji for the first time since, what did we all start doing when COVID hit? We were socially isolating, right? But we were connecting with, I think there was an exponential growth in people's interest in Shastra. So Mataji's been doing Bhakti Shastri through Prabhuji's Bhakti Shastri course since COVID. So, and she just came here today to get to have some association with Prabhuji and all of you. So let's welcome her and Brian Prabhu. He had been going to the Bhakti Center when it was open with a loud Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. And our very dear friend, Dal Krishna Prabhu is here. I've known him since, it was 2001, right? When we met, when Devla was just a little baby. Yeah, so Dal Krishna Prabhu, our great friend and wonderful, always encouraging us. It's nice to see you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Anyone here for the first time? I think everybody else here was here yesterday. Thank you for joining us, Prabhu, as well. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, sorry to take up your time.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. It's either Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Am I audible behind?
There's some sort of, there's like some feedback mechanism going on, right?
Okay.
So if you want to try this one instead, I think
Okay, sure.
time while this is getting going is we'll have plays by the youth and some adults on and then one will break for father, and then two will be gather for.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay, this is better.
Now, Krishna, is this feedback saying is approximated to the speaker, you think, or? Okay.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I think it's okay. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare. Okay. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshuronmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। Thank you all for coming today, and we're continuing our discussion on the topic of Sharanagati, surrender. So we started this yesterday, actually before yesterday evening, broadly talking about how when surrender is being talked about, surrender within the spiritual domain is primarily an expression of love. So we surrender not out of fear, not because we are trapped, say as happens in the military when somebody can't fight, but we surrender, it's a voluntary expression of our heart's love. And while surrender is an action, we surrender to the divine, surrender to Krishna, but its surrender is also a attribute. It's more like a disposition that we cultivate, a disposition that keeps us connected with Krishna. And how do we surrender? What is surrender meant to do? So we talked about how we use the medical metaphor for this purpose. That how you were able to see. Okay. So we used a medical metaphor to illustrate the point that we are all suffering from a okay. So we are all suffering from a misdirection of love. We all long for lasting love, lasting life, lasting joy, lasting relationships. And that is ultimately possible when our heart's love is directed towards Krishna. And this present misdirection of our heart's love, whichever direction it might be, it can be cured by the practice of bhakti. So bhakti is like a spiritual therapy to cure the misdirection of our love. And in the process of bhakti, we could say Krishna plays multiple roles. Primarily, Krishna is like our physician. Okay. He's like a physician who is going to help us cure, but Krishna is also the object of love. So he's the source of the cure, but and also the object of love. So he's going to help us in both ways. And now when we are trying to do this, we discuss two main limbs out of the 6 limbs of surrender. We took the medical metaphor that when a patient wants to be cured, the first thing what the patient needs to do is follow the prescriptions and avoid the proscriptions. So in that connection, discussed about how accepting the favorable and having boundaries towards the unfavorable. So discussing the 6 elements of surrender in terms of the mnemonic A, B, C, D, E, F. So accepting the favorable and avoiding the unfavorable. So surrender is not passive. It is not that, oh, I surrender, I just raise my hands and leave things. No, it's active. It's consciously choosing. And we create boundaries toward the unfavorable. And in this way, we can actually grow dynamically in our journey towards learning to love Krishna, to becoming absorbed in Krishna. So similarly, when a patient is taking treatment at one level, okay, just follow the doctor's instructions, the do's and don'ts, and you'll be cured. But if the treatment is demanding, then it is important the patient have faith in the doctor. And the doctor really knows the business and the doctor will work for my benefit. So similarly, C is confidence. So confidence, faith in Krishna's protection. That suppose there is some, while we are going through our life, suppose there are some dangers that come up. Like suppose we are taking treatment and suddenly some complications seem to come up. So things improving, they seem to be worsening. So at that time, do we just quit the treatment or do we continue on? Then a D is dependence on Krishna's, on Krishna as our maintainer. That it is not just that Krishna protects us during danger, he also is always maintaining us. Even now, our existence is based on Krishna. And it's Krishna's arrangement, Krishna's mercy. So like the doctor can not only cure me of a disease, but the doctor can also restore me to full health. Doctor can not only deal with emergencies, but overall well-being can also be promoted. And the last two is that E is engagement, wherein we engage ourselves, engagement of our entire being. It is analogous to when, suppose there's a very difficult treatment, then not only the doctor is giving the treatment, the patient also has to be committed. So are we ready to commit ourselves to Krishna, to the process of bhakti for our transformation? So love, after all, involves the entire heart. Otherwise, there cannot be any deep or transformational love. And the last is futility. Atmanikshepa kar. So each of them has Sanskrit word. Anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varjanam. Rakshishiti vishwaso goptrutve varnandata. Atmanikshepa and arpanye. So futility of our existence without Krishna. So it is like patient is fully committed to the treatment and understand that if I am not cured, then my life is worthless. Life is not worth existing. So if somebody is convinced, and they will really wholeheartedly commit to the treatment. So today, the session we discussed yesterday these two elaborately, and today I'll be focusing on the part of confidence, and within that I'll talk also about dependence. So now the protection of Krishna in our day-to-day life, how does it happen? I'll talk about it using a framework. So this will be a little long, but I'll be using the acronym PROTECT to explain this. How Krishna protects in various situations. Now, The first is often the most dramatic. It's Krishna comes personally and protects. And this is the often the, let's take up one by one. Krishna's personal protection is generally the stuff of miracles. Now, can anyone think of a incident from scripture where Krishna comes personally and protects someone when they're in trouble? Draupadi, wait a minute, yeah. Let's look at one by one. Prahlad, yes, Prahlad was one. Actually, in the case of Draupadi, did Krishna come personally? Well, Krishna, we'll look at that a little bit later. Sometimes in the movie depiction and picture depiction, we see Krishna over there, but it was not that Krishna was there. All that happened was a miracle by which her cloth became unlimitedly extended. So Prahlad, we are going to just celebrate Narasimha Chaturdashi. So Krishna came personally in the form of Narasimha Dev and he protected Prahlad. So that's personal. Anyone else? One more example? Gajendra, yes. So I would say among all of the examples that we have, Prahlad and Gajendra are among the most dramatic examples. The Lord just breaks through a pillar and comes out. Parikshit Maharaj, when was that? Okay, yeah. When you can say infant Parikshit, he saw the Lord coming. That's beautiful. Yes. It was a pre-born, he was in the mother's womb. And he saw, who is this mystical being who has come to protect me? So the Lord does come personally. Yeah, that is a combination because he came personally, but the protection itself was in a mystical way. Yeah, so you could say, we'll come to that a little later. That's true. Mother Earth with Varahadev. Yes, nice. Bhumi Devi, Earth, and Varahadev. So these are all, we can think of many incidents. Earth was Bhumi Devi, she was protected by Varahadev. So you can think of incidents where the Lord comes personally and protects. Now, while the scriptures do describe these kind of incidents, most of the time when these incidents happen, we understand that the scripture is describing a period which is spanning millions of years and across many universes. So in the totality of existence, these incidents of the personal intervention of the Lord are relatively rare. And the reason they are rare is this is rare because the Lord has arranged for the world to function in a way that it is complete in itself. The Ishopanishad explains that Om Purnamadaha Purnam Idam. That this world is also Purnam. And within this world, Krishna has created mechanisms and systems by which things function. And when there is a severe disruption, that's when he comes. But otherwise, there is a self-correcting mechanism within the system itself. This personal appearance is also a principle. The broad principle is Krishna says, Sambhavami Yuge Yuge. He says, I come again and again. This is specifically referring to his Yuga avatars when he comes. He mentioned this in the Bhagavad Gita 4.78. So this is the first, his personal protection. Now, sometimes he protects personally. Now, many times he protects through his representatives. Now, when the representatives come, they can protect in various ways. Sometimes they can, just say the Lord can intervene in miraculous ways. The representatives can also intervene in miraculous ways. But in general, like I said, broadly speaking, I'll talk about these various ways of protection. We'll be putting it into a particular framework towards the end. In general, whenever there is, say, if I'm here and a problem is coming in, some adversity is coming in our life, there are three ways the problem can be solved. One is that we that adversity itself gets removed. So this is what we can say, mitigate. We get out of that situation, or rather we fight against the situation, that problem goes away. That's one way we are protected. Another way we will be protected is that we develop a thicker skin, that the problem remains, but we learn to tolerate it. And sometimes by this we grow. And the third is that Krishna just gets us out of the situation. That is mitigate. Mitigate. Yeah, you got it. Thank you. I was just testing, checking. So, emigrate. Emigrate means we get out of the situation. And that getting out of the situation could be that we get out of that situation, go to another situation, or Krishna just gets us out of the world itself. He takes us ultimately to him. So essentially, the solution to problems happens in these ways, 3 ways. That is, we could say circumstance. The first is circumstance changes, that we learn to mitigate the problem, and otherwise we get insight. We get some insight, we get some inner strength by which we can tolerate it. Or there is transcendence. We just transcend the situation. Ultimately, we go out of the world. So Krishna's final protection is in this form. Krishna's ultimate protection comes in the form of transcendence. This is his ultimate protection. That Parikshit Maharaj, for example, was ultimately protected. He died, but his soul was elevated and liberated to be united with Krishna. Are you able to see from there? So if you see this is another acronym broadly, Chit. That the Chit, the soul is Sat Chit Ananda. So in general, the solutions that come to our problems, they will come in one of these ways. Sometimes it can be a combination of these also, but either change of circumstance happens. Sometimes we expect Krishna's protection to come solely in the form of change of circumstances. Most of the time, some person is troubling us, and we pray to Krishna, Krishna, just change that person to become obedient to me. Well, things may not always happen like that. So, but sometimes change of circumstances do happen. So either external change, internal change, or change of our very situation itself. These are the 3 broad ways in which a difficult situation may be resolved. So now when we consider these 3, so change of circumstances associated with mitigate. The insight that we get is associated with tolerate. And the ultimate transcendental protection is associated with emigrate. So every situation is ultimately an opportunity for us to choose. So we talked about accepting the favorable and tolerating the unfavorable. Is it tolerating the unfavorable? No, it is going beyond the unfavorable. It is turning away from the unfavorable. So all of these are opportunities for us to surrender and move forward toward Krishna. So first is, we discuss protect is P, personally he comes. The second I was talking about, R was what? Representatives. Now when we talk about representatives, Krishna can have many representatives. But here, primarily we're talking about the saints, the spiritual teachers. So these are the people through whom Krishna gives us the wisdom, the guidance, the solace by which that protection happens. Now, his representatives can be many. Broadly in society, there are the Brahmanas who give spiritual protection, and there are Kshatriyas who are meant to give material protection. But it is not limited to that. So if we are sick and then we go to a doctor, a devotee doesn't think that Krishna is here and a doctor is here. She says that Krishna can act even through the agents in this world. And the doctor may or may not be a devotee, but the doctor's healing potency comes from Krishna. So now, this is a very inclusive understanding of protection. That means God does not have to come personally. That aham aushadhim in the Bhagavad Gita says, I am the healing herb. So generally speaking, the way Krishna's role, if you consider in the material world, is in many ways similar to his role in the Kurukshetra war. In the Kurukshetra war, Krishna chose that I will not fight personally. It was Krishna who was acting through his representatives. Swair dorbhair asyana dharmam. Bhagavatam says that sometimes Krishna acts with his own hands to rid the world of tyrants and demons. Other times, he acts through the hands of others. He acts through his representatives. So Dharma was protected on the battlefield of Kurukshetra by Arjuna, by the Pandavas. So Krishna acts in this world through his representatives. And Srila Prabhupada had that vision by which he could see. For example, when he was single-handedly printing and publishing and distributing Backward magazine in India at the time of the Second World War in the 1940s. An ordinary Indian citizen, he said that, Swamiji, you're distributing books, you're distributing magazines, people read and throw away magazines. Why don't you write books? People will preserve books and they will read them. They're there for a long time. And Prabhupada said, this is Krishna speaking. Krishna is guiding me so that my efforts can become more effective. So in general, this point includes that when we seek Krishna's protection, we understand that Krishna can act through people and not just only pure devotees. Yes, there are exalted souls, there are saintly souls, there are pure devotees, Krishna acts through them. But then there are two conceptions of Krishna. Like we are here and then Krishna is not in, and Krishna is the omnipotent being, Krishna is here. So this is one understanding, and this is fair enough understanding. That the soul and Krishna are two different beings. While that is true, but another understanding is that we are all parts of Krishna. Now that does not mean that Krishna does not have his independent self-existence. Now there is Bhed and there is Abhed. So the understanding that I am here and Krishna is there is the understanding of Bhed. That there is a difference between me and Krishna. And while that is true, but there is also a harmony meant to be there between us and Krishna. And there is the Abhed part. So Krishna does not have to act by personally coming in this. Krishna can send his agents to help in different ways. Many of you probably know that story of a person who was trapped in a flood. And he said, oh God, please protect me. And people came along and said, come on, there's a flood over here. We should leave. The flood they had got the warning, the flood was there. And the rescue person came and said, come, we should go. He said, no, God will protect me. Yeah, and the flood started rising. And everybody around had left. And then his whole house was getting inundated. So he went to his terrace and was standing on the terrace. And then some people came in the rescue boat. He said, come on, let's go now. He said, no, God will protect me. And as the water started rising, he had gone on a water tank on the top of a terrace and he was there. And finally, helicopter came and they sent a rescue rope down. And he says, come now, let's go. He said, no, God will protect me. So then the water had risen so that even the tank, he was almost up to the neck. And he said, God, why did you protect me? I sent all the people who came to warn you. So you don't have to wait for God to personally come. But that is not, in general, the mood of a devotee. That if we are truly devoted to the Lord, it is not that we demand that the Lord go out of his way to protect us. So he protects us through his representatives. And this especially means that we take responsibility for helping each other. That And when we see somebody else in trouble, it could be a devotee, it could be a friend, it could be an acquaintance. If it is within our capacity to help, it is we who need to become the representatives of Krishna. The representatives are not just saintly people. The representatives are not just some appointed protectors, like say the police or rescue workers or the various people. Actually, each one of us is meant to become a representative of Krishna. So if I am here, if I see somebody who is, they're fallen down, they're injured, then it's not just enough that, oh, Krishna, you come and protect. I prayed for him. If we can help, then we become instruments for Krishna. In fact, for most people, their whole faith in Krishna is dependent on how the representatives, those who are supposed to represent Krishna or God, act. So if those who are devoted to God are kind, helpful, selfless, saintly, then that increases people's faith in God. And if they are the opposite, then no matter how much philosophy we may talk about, that is going to alienate them. I was just in Texas. So last time I had been in Texas, I was going for a program and I saw a car ahead of me the bumper had a sticker. He says, "Oh God, please save me from your preachers." So normally God saves us through his preachers. Now, of course, save is a very Christian evangelical word, but still, the point is that the preachers are holier than thou, hell and brimstone preaching, and they don't want anything to do with this kind of thing. So if they're puritanical, looking down, moralizing, then again, that alienates. So it is, when this protection is not just a passive thing that, oh, I depend on God, and God will protect me. No, God can act through his representatives, they can be people around us, and that can even be us. One time a person prayed to God. He said, God, there's so much trouble in the world. Oh, why are you not? You say that you'll come and protect. Why are you not coming to protect? Why don't you send someone if you can't come? So suddenly that person heard a voice. I have sent someone. Who is anyone else? Okay. Why don't you send someone? I have already sent someone. This time the voice was much clearer, much firmer. Okay, who is that? Okay. Why don't you send someone? I become a request itself become very timid now. Why don't you send someone? I have already sent someone. Now hey, this is really God speaking. Okay. So he became a little more timid and a little more says, whom have you sent? You. So you say, I don't have the power to solve the problems of the world. Maybe we don't. But see, the nature of the world is that there will always be problems in the world. Even when Krishna comes, he establishes dharma, but a generation or two later again, dharma goes away. But just because the problems are not going to permanently go away, doesn't mean that we don't try to fix them. We act in the mood of service. So this is Krishna acts through his representatives. And it is for us when we find that somebody is in trouble, if a devotee is terribly sick, and the devotee needs some medicine, the devotee needs some food, the devotee needs some practical support, we tell them, Krishna will protect you. No, that is the time we need to have some service attitude. We need to be there to be of help. For many devotees, often their faith comes when they are in trouble and the community helps. And this often happens when a devotee is, say, in the final stages of their life. The whole community devotees may come and help them in their final transition. So this is the second part, representatives. That is up to us. So what is the acronym we are discussing? Protect. Yeah. So then third O is his omnipotence. Now this is, Krishna's personal coming is also stuff of miracles, but along with that, when he comes in this world, he may come personally, but sometimes he may use his omnipotence. Now, this can be in miraculous ways, but it can also be ways that seem miraculous. That means now Krishna can sometimes use his omnipotence to do miracles where he is not necessarily himself present. So this is where I put the example of Krishna protecting Draupadi. Krishna was not present there. Nobody saw Krishna. All that they saw was Draupadi was about to be dishonored and she prayed to Krishna. When she prayed to Krishna, what happened? She was just raising her hand in surrender. And suddenly her cloth became unlimited. So there was this. The person was trying to dishonor her, Dushasan. He became exhausted, but her cloth did not get exhausted. So that was the miraculous intervention. So Krishna can intervene through miraculous ways. But Krishna, his omnipotence, can work also in ways that, now there are real miracles that can happen, but they can be seemingly miraculous. That means that there's a circumstance which we may call as coincidences. That means that somebody just at the right place at the right time, or things just work out right. So Srila Prabhupada, when he went to America, he was all alone and he had no money, he had no institutional support, he had no followers. And he was trying here, trying there, nothing was working. Just as nothing had been working really well in India, similarly it seemed that his attempts in America were also to be doomed. And yet, Krishna arranged for Srila Prabhupada to come to New York, and then from the New York main side, main part of the city, he came to the hub of the counterculture, the Lower East Side. And there he found, while at first glance, the people seemed to be the most unlikely audiences for a person who had lived a very pure lifestyle, who was elderly, who had no knowledge of the specific knowledge about Western culture and Western history. But they had that spiritual spark. The Prabhupada had not done an elaborate sociological study of America to know that this would be the time where people would be interested in Eastern spirituality. Prabhupada was just exploring, and it worked out that he was there at that time. And that didn't mean that it was easy. It was tough. But still it worked. In fact, there are three circumstances, this is itself a big subject, how Krishna arranged for Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada says in his Markine Bhagavad Dharma, the song, Nachao, Nachao, Prabhu Nachao se mate. That, my dear Lord, please make me dance. Now Prabhupada said, please make me dance. Now for dancing, you need a stage. Now when the stage is there, then we can have a dancer. The stage may be very good, but still you need an expert dancer. So Prabhupada arranged, or the Krishna arranged for Prabhupada, that this stage was set culturally, that from the cultural perspective, this was the time when people in the West they already had been exposed to some amount of Eastern spirituality from the perspective of many other leaders who had come, but most of them had talked about monistic, impersonal philosophy. Prabhupada was the person who talked about love of God and the personal relationship with the divine. And not only that, actually this was the time, so this counterculture, and this started in the 1962, 63, 64. And by the time it came to 67, 68, 69, it died out. Because these people were initially interested in spirituality, they were exploring. And there was a notion at that time that drugs will lead one to spirituality. So they started taking drugs. But at that time, many of them were really earnest. They genuinely believed that drugs will take them to the spiritual direction. But after some time, after a few years, all that initial enthusiasm went away and they were just drug addicts. So that counterculture was a phase within the history of America. Prabhupada just came at the right time. So we could call it a coincidence. Not a coincidence, it was Krishna arranging that. And it's not just that, also legally, things worked out just right. Just 2 months before Prabhupada came to America, actually the American government loosened its immigration laws. After 1920, around 1920, America had tightened its immigration laws, and immigration in America was very difficult. When Prabhupada came, at that time, he came with a 2-month visa. And he would have had to go back. But he just kept extending the 2-month visa. And he was allowed to extend it once, twice, thrice, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. Prabhupada almost for a year. And there was really not much to show. And finally, he started having a few followers. But still, at that time, they were running into legal trouble. So one of his disciples was tasked with that purpose of extending his visa. He said that, Swamiji, it's very difficult. You have to be related with someone in America. Only then you can get a visa. Prabhupada said, no problem. So you and your wife adopt me as your son. So Prabhupada was at the age of their grandfather. So Prabhupada's spirit was indefatigable. And somehow it was at that time that this countercultural singer and poet Allen Ginsberg, he met Prabhupada. He had already been involved in singing Hare Krishna, and here he found a Swami who actually knew the theology behind the singing of Hare Krishna. Now, he had quite many different ideas. He was also active proponent of taking drugs and stuff like that. But he appreciated Prabhupada. And then I want to do something for Swamiji. And the devotees said that we are having this, Swamiji is doing this. He said, this is what, it's so wonderful, Swamiji is here now. Whenever anybody asks me about Hare Krishna, I'll send them to Swamiji. He said that one of the devotees says, unfortunately, that won't be possible. Swamiji will have to go back to India soon. His visa is not being extended. He says, oh, that's no problem. I'll tell my attorney. And the devotees talk with the attorney. And after that, Prabhupada never had any problem with his visa. So, the Krishna arranged. So, sometimes Krishna acts through circumstances. So, this is the omnipotence of Krishna doesn't have to necessarily mean that there has to be miraculous intervention. It can be the intervention. It might be in the normal course of things. Okay, you meet somebody here, somebody there, but that works out. That solves the problem. In fact, if we look at the Krishna consciousness movement, wherever our movement is spread, there have been so many extraordinary incidents like that. The devotees were having a temple and it seemed that the temple had to be closed down or something like that. And then they just meet the right person and this happens, that happens. And it moves on. So this is Krishna uses his omnipotence. It can be through ordinary, extraordinary in the sense of miraculous, or through ordinary circumstances, but which come together in extraordinary ways. So that's why it's very important when we talk about faith. Sometimes we think faith means certainty, that Krishna will protect me. Well, that is one aspect of faith, no doubt. But faith also has another aspect, and that is openness to possibility. That Krishna can act in many different ways. And if we have if our faith leads to a stereotypical idea, this is how Krishna should protect. No, it may not work out like that. Krishna can act in various ways to protect us. Sometimes the person may, okay. So we need to have this openness to possibility. That sometimes we are expecting a solution to come in one particular way. And then sometimes that faith, if it is considered only into the certainty, it may narrow our vision. This is the way problem should be solved. But sometimes the problem is solved in some different way. That's why if we understand Krishna's omnipotence, that means we understand that his ways are different from our ways. And we remain open. Okay. The help may come this way, the guidance may come this way, the solution may come this way. We keep our eyes and ears open to see how Krishna may act in our life. So that is the third element. What is the acronym we're discussing once again? Protect. So we move to O. Now T is what we're discussing. This is Krishna protects through his teachings. So if we consider the Bhagavad Gita itself, Arjuna was in great distress and Krishna was right there next to him. And yet we'll see that Krishna did not, in one sense, do anything spectacularly miraculous. Of course, you can say Krishna showed the universal form to him, which is true. But it is not that Krishna, as a universal form, created some miraculous change in circumstance for Arjuna. Krishna gave Arjuna the wisdom by which his vision changed, by which his understanding of what was at stake, what was the best way out of the situation that changed. And this, the various other forms of protection may or may not manifest immediately. But Krishna's teachings are always available for us. And sometimes we are in trouble and we sometimes pray to Krishna, or we just open the Bhagavad Gita, we hear some talk, we glance through a scripture, and suddenly at some point stand us, hey, this is what makes sense to me. So Krishna's teachings they're always available for us. And in fact, these teachings, they don't just help us deal with problems, but also you can say these teachings serve a bigger purpose, and they help us prevent problems. Krishna's teachings give us a broad understanding of the purpose of life. And then when we are aligned with the purpose of life, then the problems we face are far lesser. Suppose say somebody comes from India to America. They're trying to drive in America. Now in India and America, although the many rules of driving might be the same, but there's one big difference. What is that? As a right-handed, you drive exactly on the opposite side. Whenever I'm for a few months in India and then I go to America, a few months in America, I go to India. Then after a program or before somebody's driving me to a program, I always end up going on the wrong side. Because the driver sits on one side, driver sits on the other side. So it's amazing how the purpose is the same. The purpose is smooth traffic. But the rules are not just different, they are opposite. And if somebody doesn't know the purpose, they may think that, okay, in America, it's completely opposite. Like that sometimes even in various religions, sometimes the specific rules may be exactly opposite, but the purpose is the same. But when you don't see the common purpose, then over the rules, over the specific, people start fighting with each other. But the point is, Krishna's teachings, they give us a guideline. So if somebody tells us, okay, now you're in America, you have to drive on the right side. Okay, that insight itself is here from a lot of trouble, that knowledge. So the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, they help us align with the purpose of life. They help us avoid activities that are going to increase troubles for us. Now, the Gita does tell us at one level that certain level of distress is unavoidable. The Gita says the world is dukkhalaya. Now, this is not a pessimistic statement, although it can seem like that. The teachings, the Gita is actually, it can seem pessimistic to some people. But it is not. It is saying, oh, this world is a place of distress. If it had been pessimistic, then what would have happened? The Gita has 18 chapters. Now, at the start of the first chapter, Arjuna is in great distress. Now, when he is in distress like this, Krishna starts speaking the Gita. And in the middle of the Gita roundabout, in the 8th chapter, in 8.15 specifically, Krishna says, this world is a place of distress. So now, Krishna could have said, this world is a place of distress, you are in distress, therefore the Gita is proven to be true. Now, Bhagavad Gita over. The point of the Gita is not to say that because the world is a place of distress, you just live in distress. The point of the Gita is something very different. It is that the Gita is essentially a guidebook for decision making. Arjuna has to decide, should I fight or should I not fight? So Krishna is telling Arjuna don't base your decisions solely on the path of least distress. That if somebody thinks the purpose of my life is to avoid problems, well, that purpose itself is the biggest problem for them. Because somehow or other, this problem, that problem will keep coming. We need a bigger purpose in our life. So Krishna is saying, you're thinking of fighting this war is very difficult, therefore I'll not fight the war. No, don't just think in terms of what is the, like we say, the path of least resistance. Don't just choose based on what is the path of least resistance. Krishna says decision making should not be based on this. It should be based on the path of maximum transformation. The transformation could be external, it could be internal, but it is how can we be the highest impact change that we can do in our life. So now in this case, Krishna, he tells this world dukkha, but by the end of the Gita, what is happening is Arjuna has become calm. The problem itself has not miraculously gone away. Arjuna still has to fight the war. But the wisdom of the Gita has given Arjuna the strength by which he can face the problem, by which he can deal with the problem in a mature way. But still we may say, okay, Krishna promised Arjuna that all his problems will go away, that he will attain victory. And that assurance of Krishna, that was what gave peace to Arjuna. Well, yes, but not entirely true. Because if we consider the Gita was spoken at multiple levels. It was spoken by Krishna to Arjuna, but the same Gita was also spoken by Sanjay to whom? Dhritarashtra. Now, at one level, you could say that when the Gita was spoken to Arjuna, Arjuna's heart was changed. Now, was Dhritarashtra changed? Dhritarashtra was not changed. And yet, what we see is, by the end of the Gita, specifically in 1876 and 77, it described that Sanjay is simply remembering the teachings of the Gita. He says he's remembering Krishna's form, he's remembering Krishna's message. Tacha samsrutya samsrutya samvadamim adbhutam. Keshavarjunayo punyam rishyami chamukham. So just by remembering Krishna's message and Krishna's teachings, or rather Krishna's message, which contains his teaching and which reveals his form, the glory of his personality, Sanjay becomes uplifted, Rishyami. Although his mission has been unsuccessful, in the sense that the problem person is not changed, but still. So for many of us, it is not that turning to the Gita means we turn to the Gita and suddenly our problems miraculously go away. Sometimes the problems may remain. But turning towards the Gita reminds us that above these problems, there's a higher reality. These problems may come, they may go, but there is a bigger reality that we are connected with. And there's a bigger purpose, with bigger purpose for which things are happening. And thus the teachings, they reassure us. Sometimes the teachings may help us to change things. I'll come to that in the next part. But the teachings themselves can give us strength, because the teachings raise our consciousness to a higher level. If we are in an ocean, and then there is a giant wave, a tsunami-like wave is racing towards us, we will just be swept away and be destroyed by that wave. But if we can get an anchor that we hold on to, then we understand that although holding on to the anchor is difficult, but if you hold on to it, we are safe. I'll come back to this point later. But the Gita's teachings, they can act like an anchor for us. So this is how Krishna protects through his teachings. What is the next in the acronym? E. Now, E is empowerment. Like this is related with R, representatives. Krishna, there mainly I was talking about how Krishna can act through the people around us. Krishna can protect us. So, but Krishna can also empower individuals. He can empower us, he can empower others. And empowerment means some extraordinary ability comes in. And that's how that person is protected. If we look at the prayer that Kunti Maharani offers, Vishan Mahagne Purushad Darshanad. It talks about various incidents where the Pandavas were in danger and they were protected. Because some of those incidents, that Purushad Darshana, and there is big demons that can refer to a demon like Hidimba. At that time, Krishna did not come in suddenly in some miraculous way. But Krishna empowered Bhima. In the battlefield, Krishna empowered Arjuna. So we see human ability as also a gift from God. So it is human ability does not exist independently. It comes as a gift from God. Paurusham, Krishna says. I am ability in people. Empowerment. Now, empowerment can be in many ways. Empowerment can be in terms of ability. That somebody just gets an extraordinary amount of ability to do certain things which they otherwise are not able to do. Arjuna, he was able to defeat warriors who were far more powerful than him. That ability was there. But sometimes empowerment can also come in terms of determination. That sometimes we find that when we start practicing bhakti, that it is not that necessarily the problems go away. The problem may still be there. But the practice of bhakti, it toughens us internally. And the same problem, if this is our life journey, and say this is the time when we start practicing bhakti. We start connecting with Krishna personally. Now, the same problem might come in our life. Maybe we lose our job, we get some severe disease, maybe some relationship breaks down, whatever. So the same problem, it seems to be hurtling down upon us in both situations. But we will find that our inner toughness will increase. So if a problem is like a huge catastrophe that is falling down upon us, that problem might be there, but we'll find that our inner toughness, our inner resilience will increase. Now here, maybe before we started practicing bhakti, we were like sometimes you have a glass paperweight. It falls down, it just cracks apart. But once you start practicing bhakti, we become like a rubber ball. It falls down, but the greater the force it falls down, faster it rises. So we will find that although the same problem comes and will be affected, but the magnitude of the effect will be far lesser. So the empowerment comes in terms of our capacity. So when I talk about determination, you can also put it as capacity. Empowerment doesn't have to mean the miraculous elimination of obstacles. It can mean the persistence amid the obstacles. Like if you consider Srila Prabhupada was empowered, that's what, but if you look at Prabhupada's life, it was not that there was all obstacles removed. That didn't happen. So many obstacles came in Prabhupada's life. So empowered doesn't mean that all obstacles removed. It rather means that persistence amid all obstacles. That capacity comes within us. That inner toughness comes by Krishna's mercy. And this is an extraordinary level of empowerment. When this happens, then it is not so much that we seek the remove obstacles. Yes, the obstacles will be removed. But we'll find that we have layers of strength within us that we didn't even know that we had. This is Krishna providing us empowerment. Now, there are two more. Try to complete quickly. C is Krishna gives us clarity. Clarity means what? That this gives insight. Krishna talks about this in Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yenamam Upayantite. I will give you the intelligence by which you can come to me. Or this means the empowerment is more specific, like we tolerate it. And sometimes tolerance is required. But tolerance is not the only thing to do. Can I do something to solve this problem? So empowerment could be in terms of extraordinary ability. But clarity is, see, we humans, nobody likes to suffer. But what we find absolutely unbearable, if you consider suffering is painful. If you can say degrees of pain that are there. Suffering is painful, but far more painful is meaningless suffering. When suppose somebody goes on a battlefield and they're fighting against a tyrannical enemy and they die, it's terrible. But that person, it is a meaningful death. They attain martyrdom. But suppose somebody goes on a battlefield and while they are going towards the battlefield, their jeep has a freak accident and they get blown up. That seems so pointless. So what hurts us most is not just suffering, but meaningless suffering. And what Krishna helps us understand, it can, when I'm talking about this clarity, the teachings are when we read the Bhagavad Gita, we hear scripture, that time we get it. But clarity is, it's something that arises from within us. That clarity, that we see that everything that happens is ultimately meaningful. That we see the meaning behind things. So when this happens, then that is what can completely change our perspective of things. So this meaning can come in two ways. When we talk about meaning, it can come in broadly two ways. One is that we make sense of suffering. Why is this happening? Say, if a child is suddenly taken to somewhere and child is, some sharp needle is inserted in the body, the child will protest, the child will cry, the child will start maybe hating the doctor, hating the mother who took him there. But now when we as adults, we have to take a shot. The pin piercing, the needle piercing the body is still uncomfortable, it can be painful. But when we know why it is happening, then we can tolerate the pain much. So what happens by the Gita's wisdom is it can help us to make sense of something. And when Parikshit Maharaj was cursed to die, it's terrible. It is a small mistake and he was cursed to die. But what happened? He was able to make sense of the suffering. He says, I was attached and Krishna wanted me to become detached from this. And that is why he did this. And that helped him to accept it much, much better. Now, sometimes we can make sense of suffering, but sometimes, even if we can't make sense of suffering, we can make sense in suffering. That means, I don't know why this happened, but let me act in a way that makes things better, not makes things worse. One of my friends is a firefighter, and he told me that whenever they are called to the site of a fire, the first thing is they want to know what caused the fire. Was it some explosives? Was it some gas? Was it electricity? Then that helps them to deal with the fire. But sometimes there's just no information available. If no information is available, that does not mean that they can't fight the fire. See, they think, okay, what is the best thing we can do in this situation? Okay, this fire is here. There's a lot of property over there, a lot of civilians over there. We don't want the fire to go over there. So they can't make sense of the fire, but still they can make sense in the fire. Okay, let's stop the fire from going over there. So like that, sometimes when you talk about acting in a mood of service, what does it mean? When Krishna speaks the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna after the Kurukshetra war occurs, and in that, Arjuna faces a catastrophic loss. What is that loss? The loss of his own son, Abhimanyu. Arjuna is broken, he's shattered when he comes to know about it. And he had been sidetracked for fighting with some other warriors on that day. And then when he comes to know, he's so shattered, he's so infuriated, he's just going through a turbulent storm of emotions within his heart. And he lashes out at his brothers. He says, are all your weapons mere ornaments? Could not one of you protect my son? Fie on you. At that time, Krishna comes up to him and pulls him into a side hug. Krishna says, oh Arjuna, in this world, adversity befalls everyone, the good people and the bad people. What differentiates the two is not the occurrence of adversity, but the response to adversity. The bad people act in ways that make situations worse, whereas the good people act in ways that make situations better. Oh, Arjuna, look at your brothers. They are in agony due to the death of Abhimanyu, just as you are. Please don't speak words that will increase their agony. So here, what Krishna told us, why that happened, it's happened now. But don't act in ways that increases everyone's misery. So with the philosophy of bhakti, with the resources that we get through the practice of bhakti, we get that clarity. Yeah, life is tough, things go wrong, but we always have a choice. We have a choice whether to have faith that things happen for a purpose and try to act in a way that is constructive, or just become bitter and let all things become worse. So service attitude ultimately means what? We often say in bhakti we should have a seva bhav. So service attitude means, if we consider that Krishna is the well-wisher of everyone. He is the benefactor of everyone, Suhrada. Therefore, if we are devotees of Krishna, we understand that Krishna wants things to improve. And therefore, let me act. If I am truly a servant of Krishna, then let me act in a way that makes things better. Sometimes we say that whenever we are in difficulty, we can pray to Krishna. How can I serve you, Krishna? That is true, but what does it mean? How can I serve you? It means we ask Krishna, how can I act in ways that make things better? And if we just have that attitude, we will find that the severity of the problem will decrease substantially. Because as long as we are simply feeling sorry for ourselves, we are feeling resentful towards others or towards the world, we are simply making things worse. How can I act to make things better? This happened, and Krishna is on our side. Krishna is not up there causing the suffering. Krishna is in here with us, helping us deal with the suffering. So when we get that clarity, we can actually face even the greatest of sufferings. And that brings us to the last part, that is T. The last T is, we're going to talk about transcendence. That Krishna has a plan that transcends our vision. Ultimately, transcendence means Krishna will take us out of this world. He will take us to him. So that clarity, that insight. Now we are all caught in the shell of ignorance, and Krishna wants us to come out of it. And we are like tiny birds. This is the shell of ignorance we are in, and within that, I can't draw a bird. Okay, whatever it is. Okay, so we are in this shell of ignorance, and Krishna wants us to come out of it. So breaking through that shell is painful, but if we break through it, there is a bigger, better life waiting for us, and Krishna wants that for us. So his ultimate protection is at the transcendental level, where we come out of material existence. And that means that normally, say we are here, this is the present, and we look at the present and we plan the future. And when our plans don't work, or things to be working opposite to our plans, we think, why is Krishna doing this? And we start becoming resentful, we start feeling abandoned, we may even feel betrayed, we may lose our faith in God. So we look at the present. The human plan is, we look at the present and we plan the future. But the divine plan works in the opposite way. Krishna looks at the future, and from there he plans the present. The divine plan is to look at the future and plan the present. Like when the bird in the shell trying to break the shell, why is the shell so hard? If the shell had been easy, I could have come out so easily. Or why was I in the shell at all for the first place? But in breaking through the shell, the bird is developing its strength. Its wings are becoming stronger. The baby bird, when it breaks the shell and comes out, it will be ready to fly in the sky. Like that, whatever we are going through, we may not figure out why we are going through it. But Krishna has a higher plan. Krishna knows the future and he's preparing us for the future. So the transcendence means that sometimes through all our reasoning, we may just not be able to understand why is this happening. We try to pray, we try to understand. But if we can't, we understand that there is some higher plan which is beyond my intelligence. And this understanding of transcendence, in one sense, the more we understand transcendence, the more it increases our tolerance. That I don't know why this is happening, but there is a purpose to this. If I just persist to this, that purpose will be revealed. Think. Did I talk about this in my Narsingh Chaturji class? Things will be okay in the end. Did I mention that? I mentioned it. Things will be okay in the end. If they're not okay, it is not yet the end. So actually, Krishna does have a plan for us, for every one of us. And this understanding, Srila Prabhupada's life, if you see, and for 40 years he was trying to share Krishna Bhakti and nothing was happening. But in the last 10 years of his life, Krishna had a magnificent plan for his success. So that Krishna's plan goes beyond our plans. And going back to that earlier example, it's the last point I shall conclude that this transcendence means, say we are in this ocean, and sometimes there's a giant wave that is charging towards us. And even if we have the anchor, but still we have to hold on to the anchor. And sometimes the wave will be so strong that we just swept away from the anchor. And I feel, right. Sometimes people say that. Sometimes people say, God never tests us beyond our capacities. But sometimes we feel that this test is just beyond my capacity. And when that happens, what do? Okay, sometimes the lesson that we are meant to learn is something different. Maybe through that failure, through that setback, through the collapse that happens during that particular test, we learn something. And Krishna is like an anchor who actually exists throughout the ocean. So no matter how far we are flung away, Krishna is still there with us. Now, how far is Krishna away from us? Does anyone know? Say if I am here and Krishna is here. Krishna is much bigger, but just for what is the distance between us and Krishna? It is one thought. Krishna is just one thought away from us always. If we turn towards him in prayer, in devotion, in remembrance, Krishna is there with us. We may be far away from Krishna because we have turned away from him. But Krishna is never far away from us because Krishna has never turned away from us. So the distance between the soul and Krishna is always just one thought away. And that is why Prabhupada, the movement that he started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. If we turn our toward consciousness toward Krishna, we can experience his presence, we can experience his protection, even amid whatever situation we are in. We may not all, when it's linked with Krishna happens, we may not get relief from problems, but that may or may not come, but still we will get relief amid problems. We'll find the problem is there, but still we get inner strength, we get some relief, we get some perspective that helps us stick through and emerge stronger through all the problems that we may face, through whatever problems we may face. So this is the multifarious other ways in which Krishna can protect. And this frame that we analyze can give us that faith that Krishna is always there to protect us, whatever be the situation. So I'll summarize. I discussed about how we can understand Krishna as a protector. I use the acronym. What is the acronym? Protect. So what does P? Personally, we discussed how Krishna came to Gajendra and others protected. R was representatives. So Krishna doesn't always act personally. Through his representatives, through the various people who are meant to protect, through each one of us, we extend Krishna's love and Krishna's kindness and Krishna's help. O was omnipotence. So Krishna can do miracles without coming personally, and Krishna can also perform coincidences where things just work out right. We discussed how Prabhupada was helped through circumstances at the counterculture time, at the legal opening time of America. Then T was teachings. That Krishna's teachings, they can both help us make choices by which we don't get into trouble. And even when there is trouble, the teachings of Krishna can guide us to either deal with the problems or to gain a perspective by which we can focus on the problems. Krishna's teachings help Arjuna face the situation. Krishna's teachings also help Sanjay to accept the situation. So then E was empowerment. That the empowerment can come in terms of some special ability that a person gets by which they can deal with problems, or can the special capacity that by the practice of bhakti, not everybody may get special abilities, but everybody can increase their resilience. They can become like not a rubber ball, but a rubber ball, not like a glass object, a glass paperweight. C was clarity. So clarity is we are able to either make sense of suffering or we are able to make sense within the suffering. And that's how we are able to face the problem. And the last T was transcendence. Ultimately, Krishna sees the future and prepares the present. And that's why if we just maintain that faith, then what will happen is we'll find that Krishna will elevate us beyond the situations. And that connection I talked about, the three modes, I won't go into all three ways in which these seven fall in various categories, but Krishna can help by changing circumstances. Then Krishna can give us insight. So change circumstances, we mitigate the problem. Insight means we tolerate the problem. And then transcendence means we emigrate beyond this world. So the more we understand, we get a sense of the multifarious ways in which Krishna can protect, and we can persist even amid the greatest of difficulties that life may send our way. So whatever karma may get us to, Krishna will get us through. Thank you very much. Shri Krishna Bhagwan ki, the Prabhupada ki, Gaura Bhaktavrinda ki, Gaura Primanand. So now we'll have a drama where we're talking about demonstrate about Krishna protecting in extraordinary ways.
You want to take questions?
Yeah, fine.
Only 40 minutes like.
Yeah. So this session was a part of a retreat, and we'll be having the last session from 2 to 4, after 2:15 to 4 roughly. So at that time, we will be continuing this theme. If you have any questions, we can discuss questions at that time. We don't want to delay further. And depending on those who are there at that time, we'll also be having a group activity where, based on this framework, we would like some of you to share how we'll form some groups and how you have experienced Krishna's protection in your life or the life of someone around you. And if at sometimes you felt that the protection didn't come, how did you deal with that? How did you come to terms with that, and what insight you got later? So we'll try to we have interactive session post lunch. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
You. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining. It's nice to see all of you. Just as FYI,